No início dos anos 80, as imagens de crianças morrendo de fome na Etiópia chocaram o mundo. O roqueiro irlandês Bob Geldof, do grupo punk Boomtown Rats, se indignou e resolveu fazer alguma coisa para ajudar os etíopes. O resultado foi o show Live Aid, assistido por 2 bilhões de pessoas pela TV. Outro irlandês, Bono Vox, do U2, entrou na campanha. E nos últimos 25 anos, os dois se transformaram em porta-vozes da África e intermediários entre as nações mais ricas e as mais pobres do planeta. O Milenio encontrou Bob Geldof no Copacabana Palace, no Rio, onde ele esteve para o festival Back to Black, que reuniu artistas e intelectuais para celebrar a África e discutir os problemas do continente.
One day you saw that BBC piece on the hunger in Ethiopia, and what happened?
I was married, I had a little baby girl, just 9 months old, and I came back in the evening in England in October, which is, you know, dark, and I turned on the BBC News and I saw something terrible. We're familiar, I think, with the idea of hunger in Africa, but this was another level. They gave the story 10 minutes on the main national news. That's a long time for, you know, a half-hour news bulletin. But the journalist came by mistake. He was going to the north of Ethiopia to cover a story, and he saw he heard about thousands of people sitting in a field, just sitting there. And when he went with his cameraman, he saw many more coming in. And he said, "What's happening?" And it was the great African famines of 84 to 86. And in this field, really, as far as you could see, were these ancient people, you know, togas, ancient faces, mostly very young children because their parents had died on the journey. Little boys of 5 carrying their sisters of 3 on their back, you know, like stick insects. I was sitting at home, my little baby, quite depressed about myself, and suddenly this terrible thing put all of this into a proper perspective. And I was disgusted, and I was ashamed, and I was enraged. And my wife was crying at the images. The cameraman was brilliant. He just let the camera show you people, not Africans, not poor people, mothers, fathers who wanted their children to be alive, babies. And it was quiet, except you could hear the wind, and you could hear the moaning of people. And the journalist, when he spoke very little, but his voice was deep with rage. And this transmitted itself to a foggy October evening in London. And I thought that, you know, it's necessary to do something. When you're told about something, when you're informed about something that is evil, to do nothing is to be complicit. And so you needed more than just putting my pound or my real into a charity box. It needed something of the self. I thought this was a crime. So it required yourself to do something. And what I could do was write songs. But because my band was now dipping in its popularity, I thought, to be safe, I'll call my friends from rock and roll of the last 10 years. So some of them had seen the report. Sting had seen the report. Bono hadn't seen it. This was a period of Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet, Boy George. So I spoke to them, and I said, look, you know, I'll write something and we'll record it. And we did, and it became a phenomenon. I just thought for Christmas it'll be a big thing.
Did they know about Christmas?
This was the Christmas record, Do They Know It's Christmas? And I thought that we'll make £100,000, we'll give it to Oxfam, basta. But it became this phenomenon because I think a lot of people saw the report in Europe. Yeah. And this little piece of plastic that Christmas became the focus of this shared disgust. And I didn't expect that, but that's what happened. And then Harry Belafonte called me from the United States, and he said, you know, he's ashamed as an American that, you know, the British kids did this, and could I come to America? And we talked to Quincy. So I went to Africa, and then I went to America and talked to Michael and Quincy, and we did USA for Africa. So quickly I realized that the record and the money is one thing, but the job now was to use this lingua franca of the planet, which is pop music. Not English, not Portuguese, not Spanish, not Chinese. Really, the world listens to pop music, and we could use that to talk about this monstrous human event. 30 million people dying of want in a world of surplus. And I understood that this was the symptoms of a singular condition, which is poverty. I also understood that charity, one individual helping another human being in sympathy and solidarity, is critical, but not enough. So you can deal with the symptoms of poverty, hunger, ill health, lack of education, to a certain extent with charity. But to deal with poverty, you must deal with the structures of poverty, and that's political and economic. So this was a very quick curve. And so from that point to today, that's what I've been working on. So Live Aid was a response to move from Britain and America to talk to the world about this thing, because 30 million human beings dying is a world human problem. 30 million of us, that's too much. And we needed to take it now to the top table of politics. We needed to say to everyone, through this little medium, this little art form of rock and roll, and say, let's focus here. And it was a huge lobby. I think Live Aid was nearly 2 billion people in 1985 were watching this. So it became political. Numbers are political. And so we began then to deal with the politics. But it was the Cold War, so nothing was moving in the political deadlock. The hot war was in the South, South America, Africa. We exported our Cold War because it was too expensive for us to fight the war. We'd lose too much. And the Soviets had no money, so they couldn't fight it. So we just pushed it to you guys, you know. You can fight, you can die. And in 1989, that stopped. So a new political flux came into the situation. And Tony Blair had watched Live Aid all day. He was a kid. He was just new in Parliament. Gordon Brown had watched Live Aid all day. Bill Clinton had watched Live Aid all day. Gerhard Schroeder. These were young men in Parliament, and now they were in power. So I had access. Bono, my old friend from Dublin, when he was a kid, he used to come and see my band in the pubs. He was now very famous. So we had access, and we began to talk to policymakers about Africa. And I asked Blair to do the Commission for Africa, which was to analyze, finally, please, empirically, at the turn of the century, why is this one continent dislocated from the rest of the world economy? So Blair did the Commission for Africa, which I sat on for a year with the leaders of Africa and the G8 leaders. 2005, we published the Commission. The Commission became the UK policy for the G8 in Gleneagles. That resulted in the debt cancellation, which is 37 million children going to school, 3 million people every day on free antiretrovirals. And so far, 35 billion extra in aid every year to Africa. It's not enough.